Right after I stepped away, like right after my cognitive dissonance sort of like cracked, um, I was like, oh my God, I was in a cult. I named it right away. I was like, that was a fucking cult. And and then I didn't want to tell anybody. I told my partner, and he was like, yeah, I know. So that was no big reveal. He was already aware of it, but I didn't want to tell anybody else. This is no different. So, welcome to DIY Coven with Joanna and Amanda. I'm Amanda, and I'm here with Joanna. We're both coaches in different areas. I work in relationships, and she works in um, health and the work of helpers and healers. And together we joined with each other and started DIY Coven. Together we joined with each other and started this group as a way to bring up topics and issues and areas in our life that we wish to transform for personal individual reasons with one another because we have a lot in common and we get along really well. And then lastly, for the benefit of others so that others can sort of partake in this conversation to a certain degree and perhaps be inspired to start their own really deep groups with other like minded people for the purpose of growing, healing, expanding, and living a spiritual life. So, today we're going to be talking about the shame and unashame of being in a cult, sort of the after effect of realizing that you've been in a cult and really owning the fact that this happened to you and continuing on with your life without this being this heavy weight and burden and judgment on you and from other people. So we've experienced a lot of shame in even bringing these topics up. This channel is not about cults and being in cults, but we wanted to personally, we needed to clear the air first and just get this out. And and we're using in I say this a lot just in my personal life, but like living a spiritual life is using the stuff of your life on purpose, with purpose, for a purpose. And so we're using this experience as a learning ground and gleaning as many lessons and as many transformational moments and as much magic from it as we possibly can. So, with that in mind, let's get this conversation started. I did want to say one more thing before we get going, and that's one of the main reasons we wanted to bring up this conversation about shame and being in a cult is being in a cult, whether you realize you're in a cult or not, is highly manipulative. When you step out of it, when you realize and you snap out of it, when you realize like, uh-oh, I was in a cult, you realize to such the degree to which you were manipulated and part of that manipulation. And we want to air this out as a way of truly deprogramming ourselves from any manipulation and investigating like all the corners of our experience to see any little dust bunnies that might be hanging around and examining all the objects in the room of our of ourselves to see what we wish to keep and what is no longer necessary. So, Joanna, after that long intro, let's get the ball rolling. So, shame from being in a cult. So please explain. How did you experience shame? What were the things that were so shameful for you?
I loved your intro.
Oh,
It was
thank
so
you.
well said. So it's been about a year and a half, a year or so since the cult. And I think I've had different shades of shame, but I really think it almost felt like an identity crisis to me because and I think we've related to each other on this, but I think of and have thought of myself as reasonable, um, intelligent, discerning, like all, like I had an idea of myself, or at least an idea of how I thought other people thought of me, even if I didn't think of that, even if I didn't think of these things myself. Like I have this front facing version of myself that is these things. Oh, Joanna makes logical decisions and she's trustworthy and I can go to her with questions and she might have a knowledgeable take on this, or I like Joanna's opinions. And coming out of that cult and realizing, like, what was that experience? And as we've talked about it more together, you and I'm like, whew, there's been I've been questioning myself on that. And it a lot of how I view myself in the world that I am trying to be aware of and shift is through a lens of how other people may perceive me. So that is where a lot of the shame comes. Like, well, will people still trust me the same if they know about this experience? Will I
Hmm.
be looked at as manipulative? I almost said manipulative, but will I be looked at as like easily manipulated? Will
Right.
I be looked at as dumb or illogical, or I make rash decisions or whatever? Like, does this just completely discredit me, honestly? So that's where a lot of the shame came. And then also, we both went into this group. You began your business, kind of worked through the group, and I had started my business and joined this group. And so it had me questioning everything. Like, as far as deprogramming, I'm like, wait, the way I'm moving forward with my business, like, what is mine and what is someone else's idea that I took on? So then it kind of brought me to a halt there, and I have some shame around that as well. But yeah, really just having me question who I am, like my own identity.
Yeah. What's mine? What was that? And what does this mean about me? I mean, what's mine from this experience, and what was solely the experience, and then what is this like? Really, it's what does this mean about me,
Yeah,
and what will other people think it means about me?
yeah, like
I mean,
oh god.
I think that's just like a classic definition of shame.
We
Like,
could be talking
is
about
this is
anything
this
right now, but yes.
is this good? And will other people think it's good? I don't know. What does this say about me that I'm like this? I yeah, I just think that's a really how a lot of people experience it. This like, is this even me?
Yeah.
And do I like this? Do I like me? And what does
And
this mean about me? And what do people think about me? Yeah.
like, I've liked that we've used the word cult too, because the definition of cult and a cult like ideology, like that is what we experienced. And using that word in particular has really drawn out some of my
Yeah.
shame. I'm like, ew, I know what a cult, I know what I think of as a cult. And to apply that to our experience really has drawn out the power dynamic that I participated in. Like, I can see it almost more clearly that way. Like, seeing it as that harsh picture of what I see as a cult has brought everything out for me to really look at, which, as you said, is part of why we're having these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, in the vein of like words have power, right after I stepped away, like right after my cognitive dissonance sort of like cracked, I was like, oh my God, I was in a cult. I named it right away. I was like, that was a fucking cult. And and then I didn't want to tell anybody. You know, I told my partner, and he was like, yeah, I know. So that was no big reveal. He was already aware of it, but I didn't want to tell anybody else. And I kind of just talked to a few other people who were also part of this group about it as a cult, and everybody agreed, but we just kind of kept it quiet. And I didn't really see anybody talking about it at great length. You know, nobody else was really making it a big deal. So I was like, maybe I should just. And part of the group that we were in, I mean, going back to our previous conversation, if you didn't listen to it, you can watch our first episode. But just to briefly explain, Joanna and I met, it was a group coaching program that was like a whole world that sucked us in. And if we didn't act in a certain way, we were kicked out, and then we couldn't access these teachings and these tools and techniques for like stepping into power and overcoming shadow. And that was like the scariest thing for me, to get kicked out. And it's one of the hallmarks of being in a cult, like constant fear of being out of good graces with the leader, and wanting so desperately to follow this leader and everything that this leader has to say. So, like, we were both in the same group, and I stayed in longer than Joanna, and I felt a lot of shame about the word cult, and I felt a lot of shame that I didn't get it right. That I still, because it was like a business coaching program, and that I didn't get my business in the place that was promised, that other people were able to achieve because they had learned this tool so well. That I still was run by shadow, and that I wasn't able to master my energy. And the evidence of me not mastering my energy was that I wasn't making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, it was, talking about it now sounds kind of silly. And yet there is still a part of me that's like, I missed my opportunity to, like, I have shame for not being as successful as was promised. Like, I still want to believe that I could achieve that, and that because I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars as a result of my business, that there is still something, like, this is still kind of like running the show to a certain degree. Like, it's still there. It's subtle. But you're absolutely right. Like, calling this a cult publicly has, it's served as an incantation. Like, the power of this word is such that, like, we have now called upon the spirits of the cult, and now we are like, raising it up with the fumes. And like, we're witnessing it, we're calling it apart, we're calling it up, we are making it real so that we can see it and work with it.
Yep.
And in our pre-conversations, coming up with this theme, we were like, this is not about, we have successfully overcome every inch of shame, and there's still this like niggling little part of me that is like, I am, I still have shame, and that's something that's wrong. Like, I have shame about still having shame, like compounding shame. Um, and it's just sort of silly. And I definitely have shame about being in a cult. But the biggest questioning of myself has been because I hold myself, and I sort of advertise myself as someone who is extremely discerning in relationships. Like, I can sort of sense nuances and sense things, and like, I can see things a mile away, and I can call bullshit on things. And when I work with clients, I see their biggest blocks, and their recurring patterns that they might not even truly be consciously aware of. I see it also clearly. Like, my discernment in my work and with personal relationships, and especially relationships with men, are really keyed in. And I pride myself on this, and I talk about teaching discernment. I sound like Jerry Seinfeld, but like, I really, really do. And it has been the biggest hit for me to be like, and I've kind of gone through this thing with trying to normalize it and justify it. Like, well, I mean, I was discerning enough to see what I was getting into. And I mean, I saw it. I always knew that there were things to, like, I saw the red flags. I just dismissed them, which is what I used to do with men all the time until I just started being like red flag, and I'm seeing it and I'm not ignoring it. And I didn't do that here, and it kind of knocked my confidence in, maybe not knocked my confidence, but yes, it knocked my confidence in saying like I know how to discern people. I guess this is a really good transition into the other topic that we want to talk about, which is like where things stand now.
Hmm.
Because like I was just telling Joanna that I pulled a tarot card about this, and I got the Seven of Wands, which was a card about discernment, and I was just like, because that's like a big sticking point for me. And this woman's interpretation that I was watching a YouTube video, and she was essentially saying that there is this you there is a like when we have a passion, an intuitive hit, like what we're discerning is that this is a passion and an intuitive hit, and we're going for it. And that just like turned on a light switch of, oh my gosh, underneath all of this has been this underlying thought that I knew I followed my intuition, and I discredit my intuition if it doesn't turn out right, if my intuition doesn't turn out the way I thought it would. So going into this, it was a big decision to like pay an enormous amount of money to be part of this group, and then continue to pay enormous amounts of money to be part of this group. And I have been dismissing and denying and discrediting how much I wanted it and how much I was following my intuition. And again, going back to the whole purpose of DIY Coven, which is like this is the stuff of our life, and it's we use the things that happen to us and our experiences for us, for a purpose, with purpose, in purpose. And just because it didn't turn out the way I thought it would does not mean I wasn't following my intuition and that I can't trust my intuition. Like it was just a whole bunch of unexpected results. So that's kind of where things stand for me. Like recognizing and standing in and like truly declaring like I did this, and this isn't a ding on my discernment at all. I discerned quite well. It just did not turn out the way I wanted, and I gave it my all, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it. So I have yet to see like all of the benefits of it. It continues to unfold. How about you? Where do things stand now for you?
I love the way you said that, and I'm with you. I think it's something I keep realizing, but exactly as you said, like just because I expected something different than what I got doesn't make the experience wrong or bad. And to go along with that, I think I'm having a lot of life lessons in like gray areas, or as one of my friends calls it, like the rainbow, not black or white. And so just, I know, um, just because I feel I had a less than ideal experience with this leader doesn't mean she didn't have good qualities that I admired and that I, wanted to be around. Or just because I left and didn't have the success I imagined doesn't mean that there's a ton of learning and experience, and like we don't even know where our lives are going from that experience we had. So to make it mean anything about me, or for me to make that experience mean something in my life, I mean, it could very well get me stuck. And today I just read something, and it was like it talked about the two ways we can take an experience. I forget what they called the one way, but the other way could be in a redemption story. So if I am going to give this meaning, then why not give it meaning that will help me really stand in it and say, like, yeah, this is me and this is what I did. Like,
Mm,
good for me. I went all in. I went all in on this. You were talking about a book about cults that you've been reading, which I think we'll probably bring up again. But the author was saying that people who find themselves
yeah,
in a cult-like experience or in a cult often are people who are very optimistic, go-getters. I think, I don't know, you can speak to the other qualities, but I think both of us have said, yeah, we went in because we're like, we are going to do whatever it takes for ourselves. And we know somewhere in us, we knew we would, have success or be stronger for this experience, or we'd make it through. Like, we weren't worried about ourselves. We knew we could handle whatever that experience would bring. So that's what I try and remember. Like, I knew, and I still know, like, where I'm going and where I'm taking myself, I can do it. I can handle it. And so
yeah,
it also is, even though it feels at times like I was in a cult because I didn't have belief in myself, or I didn't have a
right.
strong sense of self, I actually did have the belief in myself to go into this experience, which seemed daunting at the time or seemed big. And no, I was like, doing it. I'm
Yeah,
going for
yeah. Um, it's really funny how that can flip so easily. Like we felt at both desperate and I'm going to do anything it takes. And that same statement of like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, can have the energy of like desperation and need, or it could be like, yeah, I do whatever it takes. I am, I do not give up on myself. It can have such intense and amazing power. Um, you raised something just in the theme of what you were just talking about, which is just because we were in a cult doesn't mean that everything that happened or that we learned from this is like awful. It, because I it was in so many ways like the greatest in the true sense of the word, the greatest learning experience for me. And the person who was teaching us these techniques had a truly amazing approach and insight and perspective and strength. She was just using it. It went so far for her, and it became a way of what was this wonderful thing that she had to offer then became the way that she held on to power and kept it for herself. And it wasn't about other people. And it seemed to be, her approach seemed to be separated from her humanity and our humanity.
it. Yeah.
Um, and, uh, and that was the part that I, I I reject and then I stepped away from. And I was shocked to find that I kind of like got heavily influenced by, because so much of it was, she was extremely compelling and a very good teacher. Like,
Mhm.
just in terms of, she was a good teacher. She really was. She really taught us this tool. And I continued to get instruction and guidance with it to the point where like I really became an expert with it, and I honed my ability to trust my ability to truly read energy and to be able to kind of like um, mm, uh, trust my intuition and my analysis, uh, and that I could work with it, that I could stay in the face of something truly frightening, and I could do it. But I had to. This like a year has been a deprogramming of what of that is continues to be useful, and what of that is entangled with her own self-destructive power trip, and what is mine, and what is hers, and what do I want to take from this experience. So that process of kind of like sifting things through has taken a while, and and it has resulted in me having a lot of pauses with my business. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. When I sense that I'm doing something, or that I'm struggling really hard, or that I'm being really pushy with clients or with sales, I have stepped way back to be like, no. One of the biggest challenges that remains is, you know, because she was a business coach, her sales techniques in now I see were highly manipulative. So, how do I now find the best way for me in a way that I feel really, really good about, and that is totally above board, and that I don't wish to have, I don't wish to be the cause of this to anyone else. And I understand that everyone has responsibilities for their feelings, but also, like, I have responsibility for, the impact of my behavior. So it's, it has really, I've really needed to, like, it just has been an unpacking of way more than I thought it would be. Um, and perhaps it was just a really long time coming. And this was just the moment to do it all.
I think about that too. I'm like, and I think I even said this on our first video, and if not, definitely in other conversations with you, like, well, the way I see it now, I was due to learn these lessons at some point or another, and I'm grateful it happened in the way it did, as early as it did, as far as in my business's life,
Yeah.
um, because we we didn't actually fully give ourselves over to this. And
That's very true. Yeah.
so we can see everything in a way that, like, yes, we do feel like there's a lot of deprogramming to be done, and it could have been way different, or it could have happened in a way that was not so blatant. I keep bringing this up,
Mm.
but there are similar patterns occurring all around us in everyone's lives, and I'm glad I had this kind of harsh feeling one so that I could see it so clearly and call it a cult, and know what it was for me, and be able to glean these lessons from it now and use all of this going forward. And
Mm.
I I did want to speak a little bit to how well, and I think we both wanted to speak to how we were kind of working with our shame now, our like the lesson learning, like what does that look like for us? And one of the things that came up as you were talking is I think it really helped me to kind of get into my vulnerability, or to open up a little bit, to laugh. Like, I don't know when you said it, Amanda, but at some point you're like, we were accidental cult members. And just being able to like say something so absurd, I'm like, that got me to be able to say, yeah, I was in a cult. Like, I was an accidental cult member, because it sounds hilarious. It sounds like a headline or whatever. Like, it's like attention grabbing, and it's really funny. So I was able to laugh, and then I'm like, okay, I can ease myself into this. And that was a huge help for me. And then in different ways, just being with the shame of this experience, but also all of the other emotions that come up. Sometimes I'm angry and I might not recognize it as anger. It might feel like a pit in
Mm.
my stomach at first, like, man, like I did this, or I'm still experiencing what feels like a repercussion or like a down the line effect of being in this cult. And I'm like, ugh, it doesn't feel good. And then I'm mad mainly at myself, but wanting to express what I'm feeling. And I think it, just talking with you has moved so much around. And separately from this, I have been letting a lot of my emotions and feelings come through in my life in general. So I think I am trying to call attention to that in this area of my life, in this cult recovery area of my life, and um, and and still bring, like, for me, a big thing is bringing that fun into it, because I do lean towards seeing things as black, white, right, wrong, and so I above all don't want to make myself wrong or be too serious about anything. Like,
Yeah.
um, just questioning, just asking all of the different questions and looking at all the gray areas, because there is nothing, like, I get to decide what the experience was, and I get to make the meaning, and I get to create my experience right now. So that's kind of what I'm trying to be aware of, and how I want to play with this as far as right now.
Hmm.
I don't know if that brought
For me,
anything up for you. Yeah.
yeah, for me, how I've been working with this is, I mean, I started reaching out to people who are also in the group and explicitly talking to them about like how fucked up that the situation was. And and that helped. And then these conversations with you, where we've really gone into the depth of it, has been extremely useful. Like, I think shame is like this. It has a quality, an energetic quality of wanting to hide. Like, I looked up the etymology of the word shame yesterday, and it comes from like a Proto-Indo-European root word that means to cover. Like, shame
Mm-hmm.
is about like covering up. Don't show it. Like, hide this. And it has this energetic quality of like being really sneaky in yourself. You don't even realize that it is there. You don't understand how one doesn't understand how shame is running the show until you start like calling out what it is and saying like, oh, I feel shame about this. And perhaps had I not been in this group and I had not learned techniques for working with those kinds of intense emotions hands on, I don't know if I would have really known what to do with these feelings of shame. um, and for a long time after I stepped away from the group, I did not use the techniques at all. It was all about shadow work, and I did not do any shadow work. And I specifically did not use the format and framework that the group leader, you know, um, showcased and told us was the way. I didn't do it at all. And so that sort of forced me to learn how to find my own way to work with a lot of intense feelings. So I've kind of gone through a bunch of things, and one of the biggest, most helpful things for me in working with all of this is a return to what I had been introduced to in Tibetan Buddhist practices of body, mind, energetic work, deliberate contemplations, visualizations, and somatic experiences in a meditative state to work with the texture, the feel, the flowing and changing nature of a lot of these emotions and feelings. And it's been really helpful, and it's kind of helped me develop my own, you know, thing that works for me. And it has made me realize that in working with other people as a coach and working with other people as clients, I don't want to tell them the way. It really is a matter of, it just made me realize, like, oh, my special gift is helping people find their way with men and relationships and dating and love, and also their way of dealing with the intense emotions, the fears, the hesitations, the survival instincts, the shadows that come up when you try to do new things. So I'm being really vague there, but just yesterday, you and I had a conversation where I kind of shared with you how I've been working with stuff in a meditative state, and I got back into pulling tarot cards, which I haven't really been doing um, for a long time because I wanted everything to come from me, and now I'm just pulling tarot cards as a way of giving me another insight that I might not be seeing. Like, it is another message from me that I just like. It allows me to reach a different part of my soul and knowing that I'm not paying attention to. So it's not like it's magic from the other world. It's magic from me.
I really like
So
that.
yeah, and whereas I used to use tarot in this very desperate, like, what are the answers? What should I do? Kind of way, and now I'm like, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
Just show me something that is useful to me, and then I can be like, that's something I might not be seeing. Okay, that's helpful. Like, it is just a tool, and that's the overall theme of stepping away from the cult, which is like, what's useful to me, and what can I do? What can I work with in a non-desperate way, just like in a truly useful way.
I thought of something else that we both have done.
Mm,
And it relates to what you were just saying about tarot cards, or I was making a connection with what you were just saying is like, oh, what am I not seeing? I feel like life has given me some more experiences recently over the last several months as far as showing me what I'm not seeing and calling me to stand for myself. And you had an
mm,
experience like that today where it's just um, I get these opportunities to really say what I stand for or my preference. I mean, it can look even little. Like today, I was traveling and got overlooked after I requested something. And then I'm like, that's fine. I don't need to ask. And I'm like, hey, actually, wait, I am going to speak up. Like, I don't know, just those actions for me
mm.
are a way of kind of reclaiming myself or standing for myself over and over again and
Yeah,
not overthinking it.
yeah. I think there's a lot of like really high regal feminine energy that is available to us in these moments. Like these lessons of standing in unashamed, you know, being being uncovered, and I guess you could define that as vulnerable. It's also a word I don't really particularly love, uh, just because of the association with like wounding.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, this uncovered, unashamed uh, s- standing and presence and claiming of who I am. And it's not like razzmatazz, big band, marching band kind of thing. Everybody look at me. But like, uh, I, I, I feel that in this last year I've had more and more experiences of this like really regal quality that's available to me at all times. So there's a lot of like feminine grace and like just chatterless, contentless presence.
Yes.
Like, you do feel that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that when you access it and experience it, you can call yourself back to it at any time. And I think
Yeah.
you just described it so beautifully for me again to recognize it and call myself to. And for anyone listening, like, you can find that spot in yourself and act from it. And that is that is living unashamed.